Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're taking a look at the Civivi Dogma. This will be my full review and discussion. I want to start by asking you, have you ever ordered a knife you weren't sure about? Because I have to tell you, I was definitely not sure about this one. However, a couple of things sort of pushed me to order. One, I really like the look of this knife, and I like the look in this configuration, but I also like just the plain Jane one as well. The other thing is, so many people were just raving about the Civivi Ortis, but for me, that was a definite pass. The Ortis, as great as it might be, is definitely too small for me, so I knew I wouldn't be interested. But the Dogma kind of looked similar in design and feel in hand, yet was a little bit bigger. But probably, and here's what I was thinking, but probably still not big enough. Okay, and so I kind of ordered this thinking, you know what, I'll have it, I'll be able to do a review of it, so I'll get some channel content out of it. It looks kind of cool, and so, when I'm done with it, I can pass it on, and I probably won't lose a lot of money on it, so no big deal. All right, now this weighed on me to the point that I couldn't just leave it alone. I actually ordered the shredder as well, which I felt like was a similar knife but larger. And many of you will already know sort of all this background. But I wanted to kind of give you, my perspective and point out that, in this review, I'm going to sound like I'm just madly in love with this knife. And I kind of am, but partly it's because this knife had to really win me over. I had real doubts about how I would feel about this. And I kind of thought I'm probably not going to like it. So the fact that I do like it, I think tells you even something more about the knife itself. I did get this from White Mountain Knives, so if you want one for yourself, go check it out, and you can use my discount code SHARPSTUFF to save yourself a bit of money there. I can't be sure that Justin has these in stock. He does now, but it's probably going to be a week or so between me recording this and by the time it actually posts. So let me give you the size and weight first. That was the big thing that almost put me off. So this is only 7 3/4, and you guys know my magic number is kind of 8 inches, so it's close. Now the thing that put me over the edge, 3.5-inch blade. All right, generally a knife that's under 8 inches won't have a 3.5-inch blade, but this one does. The handle length here is kind of small. Okay, it's only 4 5/16 closed, which is not large at all. And yet it has 3 11/16 inches of grip area. So I can easily get a full 4-finger grip on here. You can kind of see that the way it's demonstrated there. And there's still that choil to choke up. They've also done a nice job on the blade here with a little bit of a flat spot on the back for my thumb there. So the my initial doubts have been alleviated quite quickly just by the room that I have. And so yeah, this knife is smallish, but it still has lots of blade length and lots of handle room, which are generally the two things I don't like about small knives. So the blade to handle ratio on this is really impressive, and the overall size to blade ratio is very impressive. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned it, but it does weigh only 3 ounces, so it's pretty easy to carry around. Not that something larger is all that much heavier. So let's start running through these various features, and we'll talk about each one individually now that I've kind of given you my background and a bit of size and weight here. The blade on this guy is going to be, well, the standard one is going to be D2. This one is blackened 9CR Damascus, and I actually think this looks pretty good. Now, I don't know, guys. I have to say, I go back and forth on Damascus blades, right? At this point, we understand that it's all about looks. Okay, there was a time when Damascus had some properties that were appealing, but that time is gone. We have powdered metallurgy now, and we can get the properties we want out of steel without having to layer different steels with different properties. Okay, but so at this point, it just looks cool. All right. And Civivi uses this 9CR Damascus, which is pretty decent. 9CR 18 MOV actually holds an edge pretty well, comparable to VG10, which means the knives that Civivi uses it on, you're going to get pretty decent performance out of those. And I wish they would actually use it more. The standard version of this is going to be D2, which is still good, but the lack of stainlessness is a problem for some people. I don't have a problem with D2. I've never had problems with rust on my D2 blades, but I know, depending on where you live, it could be an issue for you. All right, so that's the materials. Moving over to the blade grind and the design itself. So we've got this really cool looking clip point here, a nice fuller, very well, I wouldn't say very deep, but a fairly deep hollow grind, which means this is so thin behind the edge that it slices through material. Like it just feels like almost no pressure is required to cut stuff with this. And now there's a trade-off there, okay? There is a trade-off. So if I throw in something like this, okay, not that different in terms of size and shape and all that kind of stuff, but the thickness here and the flat grind means you're going to feel more pressure as you're cutting, but it also means this is going to be a more stout blade. You're less likely, not unlikely, because it's still a pretty tiny sharp point there, but you're less likely to break a blade like this than a blade like this. That said, I consider this more of an EDC, sort of almost gentleman style carry. So I'm not going to be taking this out to the bush. I'm not going to be beating on it too much. And so for that role, I think this blade is completely appropriate. And I have to say, from the standpoint of someone who, I just love to get my knives out and try cutting stuff and see how it feels. Hollow grinds to me are so satisfying for that, because when you cut into material, it's like it's not even there. Like it just moves so cleanly through, cardboard or rubber or anything where, anything that potentially can bind up on the blade. I just find hollow grinds move through it so nicely, and the performance you get out of them is so good. So yeah, I'm a fan of this blade. Could you get better performance out of, I don't know, like M390 or various higher end steels, S30V? Of course you could, but the price point would be reflective of that different steel choice, right? So I like this blade, and I actually do like the way this Damascus looks. I guess one more thing I should say about the blade that I'm kind of forgetting. There are some Civivi knives where I look at the Damascus pattern and I really don't like it. And so I would just offer that warning. If you're looking for a Civivi and you want to go to like the fancier version, and they have fancy versions of a lot of their knives, just scroll through the pictures that are available and see what you think of the Damascus pattern that's available. And if you're in a store, ask to actually take the knife out and take a look at it, just because I've noticed some variation with Civivi and the kind of pattern you end up with from them in their Damascus. All right, moving on to action. Here, there's not much to say. I mean, if you've had a Civivi knife, they're on ceramic bearings, they have a pretty nice detent. This is a liner lock with a flipper tab. All things we're very, very familiar with. The point that I will raise is I like the way they've done the fuller here. That allows me to either roll the knife out with my thumb or Spidey flick the knife. And so from that perspective, I do like those options in terms of the action, and find it makes this knife a little more fidget friendly than it would otherwise be. The lock bar has this jimping on it, which is a little sharp, but not, the main thing I think about when I'm assessing the action of a knife is, can I open it, close it, and use it without thinking about it? Or every time I use it, or am I kind of like, oh man, I've got to fight with this. So this is very natural, very comfortable, very intuitive. And those are the things that I basically look for. There's not a whole lot to say about the action. Ceramic bearings, to typical Civivi stuff. It's pretty darn good. Now, let's talk about the handle. That's a little more interesting, I suppose, especially given that this handle looks a little bit cool, different. This is layered carbon fiber and G10. They've done a Jigbone pattern and a full bolster. That's about the only thing I don't like about this. I actually feel like, and let me know down in the comments what you think, if I'm completely out to lunch here, probably am. I feel like if the Jigbone pattern kind of went all the way up on both sides, or even just the smooth carried all the way down, one way or the other, I don't like the full bolsters. If it's an actual bolster, that's different. I like that more. But full bolsters just, for some reason, put me off. I know I'm probably being overly picky about that, and you guys can tell me I'm an idiot down in the comments. But that's that's just the way I feel about it. Other than that, I do like this handle a lot. It's got a bit of a nice contour to it. It feels really good in hand. And here's, again, the big story with this knife is that it's a fairly small knife, but it doesn't feel small. My hand doesn't feel cramped. I feel just like I'm carrying, any of my other larger knives when I carry this. And that's the big thing that I absolutely love about this. I can carry this. It's a little smaller. It's a little fancier. So, in a more sort of more gentlemanly setting, I can carry it, but I don't feel underknifed. I don't feel like I'm compromising to carry something smaller. The G10 does feel good. The Jigbone pattern feels fine. There's a little bit of milling in here to save weight. You can take a look at that right there. G10 backspacer lanyard is incorporated kind of into, well, you can see it goes through both the backspacer and the scales. Deep carry clip with flush screws, which I'm glad to see people companies are starting to catch on. Recently, most of the knives I've gotten with deep carry clips have flush screws. It seems so obvious, but sometimes it still gets missed. Anyway, they did the right thing here, which is nice to see, and it is a movable clip. So if you wanted to flip this to left side, I know it's not just as good, and a few lefties have commented that, yeah, flipping the clip is nice, it's helpful, but it's not as good. Now, I don't know. I suppose most lefties are probably just used to doing this with their knife. They're used to opening it and closing it with the lock bar being on the wrong side. So, having said all of that, I think you guys can now see why I find this knife rather appealing. It's not super, it's a smaller knife, but it doesn't ask me to make most of the compromises that a smaller knife asks me to make. I like the look of it. I like the design. I like the blade. No, I don't feel like this is a hard use, heavy duty tactical style knife, but outside of that, and I do like those kinds of knives, no question, but short of that, and I kind of get to choose when I pick a knife like that. I really like everything else about this. Let me throw in a couple of comparisons. Let's start with the feldspar, since we've already had this, and this is kind of similar in that it's not a huge knife. This one does make 8 inches. It might be like 8 1/8 or something like that, but again, it's big enough that it feels pretty comfortable. Another knife that reminds me of this in terms of feeling bigger in hand is the Artisan Arroyo. This is a little bit smaller, I think. It's darn close. It might be an eighth of an inch smaller or something like that. But again, I feel like I've got quite a bit of room in hand here. So that might be an interesting option for you. And, if you like something like this, maybe the flashiness and the variant of the Persian style blade is appealing to you. The shredder, of course, I've already done a full discussion on this. So if you want a full comparison between these two knives, go and watch that video. I'll just throw this in. They're very similar. The shredder is bigger, and it just feels a teeny bit better in hand. The ergonomics are slightly better, but not anything to be overly impressed by. Civivi is made by We Knives, so I thought I'd throw the We banter in here. This is a fine knife. It's just a little too small for me. I know some of you watching love this thing. It is interesting to point out that, being a We knife and costing quite a bit more, the action is not substantially different. So it might be a little bit smoother, maybe. But that's one of those things that I like about Civivi. You end up getting a better feeling action than you're used to. Kaiser Gemini, this is a good, I think the action on the Gemini is very nice. Smaller knife, of course, and it feels a little bit smaller. So this is a knife where I think it's a good example of one that does ask you to make some minor compromises for the size. What else we got? Budget stuff. These have appeared in a few videos together. This is the Real Steel Phasma Free, another really cool looking knife that I enjoy quite a lot. Let's throw in a couple Spydercos to end things off. So there is the Paramilitary 2. All right, everyone's favorite Spyderco. And finally, my favorite Spyderco, the Amalgam. I guess it'd be a tie between this and the Manix 2 Lockback. So there you go. A few different size comparisons there, a few competitive options as well. So hopefully that, helps you kind of know what you think about this knife, and maybe if you feel like looking elsewhere, that may give you some direction to look. All right, so what do I think about this? Well, if you've been watching, guys, I like it. I like a lot of things about this knife. Really good. The budget it's reasonably priced, especially if you're buying these in the US. I know for my Canadian viewers, don't even get me started on Civivi prices from Canadian retailers. It's insane. All I would say is go through Justin at White Mountain Knives. Most of his stuff has no issues with the border, especially if it crosses through the sort of eastern end of the border. I've had a few hiccups out west. But this is a great budget knife. I like the fact that this allows me to carry something smaller and lighter without making any of the compromises that normally come along with that. I do not feel like I'm carrying less of a knife. I feel like I can do anything I need to do with a knife. I can get it done with the Dogma. Yet it's definitely fairly confined. It's a fairly small, tight package. I do like the look of this. I haven't even commented. I've almost treated this knife as if it's just the standard version. I guess I should say something very briefly about that. I like this particular version of the Dogma. There's a brass one as well with the Black and 9CR, and there's another color like a baby blue G10 instead of the dark blue. All of those, I think all of them look pretty good. I went with the G10 in carbon fiber because I like the lightness. The bronze or copper, whatever it is, I think it's bronze, does add a little bit of weight, and I wanted to avoid that. So this was more appealing to me, and I like the way it looks. Now that's beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so that may be different for different strokes for different folks, as they say. So there you go, guys. Those are my thoughts. Again, you can check out White Mountain Knives to get a good deal on these. And if they don't have anything, I know Southern Edge Knife Works, my other channel sponsor, does carry some Civivi stuff as well. So go check over there too. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.